Hello friends, today I'm talking about waking up with anxiety or anger and how to work through it. So if your mornings are not how you want them to be, if you feel like you're stuck in a pattern of emotions in the morning that you don't want to feel, then you're going to want to watch this video. Okay, so for those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live weekly and we talk about all of this together. So if that's something you feel you could benefit from, make sure you check out the link in the description box below. Okay, so let's talk about what default emotion you have in the morning. Okay, and when I say default emotion, it's the emotion that you have even if you don't want it. It's the emotion that you don't have to try to have, it's just there. Okay, and specifically we're going to talk about if that default emotion is anger or anxiety. The first thing that I want to mention is that when we have a strong emotion that doesn't seem to be able to kind of feel resolved and kind of go away, it's usually an emotion from the past. And I know a lot of people don't like to go there. They don't like to go to the past because they're like, it's done, it's over, I just want to deal with it in the here and now. But the reality is that a lot of the things that we're trying to overcome are coming from the past. And we have to acknowledge that, otherwise we're just going to keep doing the same things over and over, which means we are expecting change by doing the same things. Insanity, right? It doesn't work. So the first step is to kind of try to understand why you might be having this default emotion in the mornings, okay? In other words, what was your morning like when you were in childhood? And this can be hard for some people if they had more extreme childhood trauma or childhood neglect, because the brain tends to delete in an effort to help or keep you safe. But if you don't know what your mornings were like, just think of the people you were around when you were in childhood and imagine them in your life now. What emotions do they provoke in you? Is it anxiety and anger? Is there a connection between what happened in the past and your mornings now? Because the thing is there are two things that are happening. One is, if you felt a lot of anxiety in childhood, in your mornings or at night, right? You felt a lot of anxiety, your body memorizes your routines, right? It does, it thinks it's helping you when it does that. So 7 o'clock comes around and your body's like, oh, it's 7 o'clock, time to feel anxious or time to feel angry, because it's something that was done for so long. So sometimes your body's in a habit, okay, and that's why things keep coming up. But more often than not, if you're dealing with childhood trauma, it's two things. It's your body's on a habit combined with the emotion that's coming up is an unhealed wound, okay? So the way we tend to want to heal it is for it to go away. We want it to stop. However, the more we want it to go away, the more we want it to stop. Isn't it true that the emotion only gets stronger? It's like it's demanding our attention, right? So I want to give you some tips that are really, really helpful, okay? Rather than wanting your emotion to go away, rather than wanting your anxiety to be gone, and rather than wanting your anger to be gone, it's going to sound weird at first, but I encourage you to invite it. Invite it to come. Okay, so one of the reasons I encourage this is because what we resist persists. So if we're trying not to feel something, guess what? We only feel it stronger. It's like me telling you to not think of my pink shirt. Do not think of this pink shirt. Do not see pink. Do not think anything pink. In order to not think it, your brain thinks it. It's the same thing with our emotions. If we're trying not to feel something, it only makes it stronger. Okay? Whereas if we invite it, there's a different energy there. If you're like, okay, I want you to come tomorrow. I want you to show up tomorrow morning, because it's not because you like to suffer, but it's because right now you're going to get some tools that are going to help you. So you're going to change how you see it. You're going to want to invite it because now you can work through it and heal it. And the way we do that is by understanding, like I said in the beginning, a lot of those strong emotions are from our past. So we have to understand that who's showing up at that moment, right, in our body, that feeling that's showing up is a piece of our hurt self. It's a piece of our inner self, our inner child. You can call it so many different things, but it's the piece of you that felt anger and anxiety in the mornings in the past that had nobody to help you through it. So our brain is an information processing machine. It needs to make sense out of things, right? So if in childhood things didn't make sense, which if you had narcissistic parents, nothing made sense, right? If they were hurting you for things that you didn't deserve, if they were making you feel shame and you didn't understand why, if you were living in fear all the time and you didn't, nothing made sense, your brain never was able to process the emotions that were coming up in childhood because it couldn't make sense out of them. And so it got stuck inside of you, which means every time it comes up is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make sense out of it now that you're an adult, now that you have the emotional maturity, the emotional literacy through videos like these, the understanding of childhood trauma and emotional manipulation. Now you can work through it, whereas in childhood you couldn't. That piece of you that's coming up now has your adult self to help him or her. Okay, so what that looks like is you're like, okay, bring it on. Tomorrow morning you're gonna be angry, you're gonna have anxiety. I'm looking forward to this. Okay? So you wake up, scan your body, what do you feel? Trust me, you're going to feel anxiety or anger, whatever your body's in a habit of feeling. And that's when you start processing through the emotion. And this is how you do it. Step number 1 is to name it, to tame it. What am I feeling? I'm feeling angry. Now with anger, you have to remember that anger is not the real emotion. So you have to figure out what your anger is protecting you from. It's usually pain or fear. Okay, so you have to get in touch with the real emotion. So it might be pain. I was feeling hurt because every morning I was so alone. Nobody helped me with anything. I was feeling hurt because I was constantly made to feel bad and I felt so much shame. So you're naming it first. The second step is to validate it, which would have been if you had someone healthy in your life, they would have validated your feelings to you at that time. They would have said something like, I'm so sorry that happened. That was wrong. You didn't deserve that. You were doing your best. You're a good kid. So you have to tell yourself what that emotion needs to hear so that it can resolve. And you may have to say, so-and-so was wrong. That was awful what they did. That's narcissistic abuse. That's emotional manipulation. That is wrong. So now your brain starts making sense out of it because in childhood you thought it was you. You thought it was your fault. So now you're putting the pieces together logically. The third step is to change your inner dialogue. Okay? Start listening to what you're saying in those mornings. What are you saying to yourself? Because in order to be angry and in order to have anxiety, we're saying things that are bringing up the emotion in our body. So we need to change what we're saying to ourselves. And that's when we reparent that whatever's coming up, the emotion that's coming up. Sometimes we think we can only reparent a specific memory, but we can reparent the emotion that keeps coming up. So we reparent it by saying something like, even though you are feeling hurt, I'm here for you. What do you need? And now we connect with our inner self. We connect with our inner child. Okay? This process is about connection. Narcissistic abuse is about disconnection, right? When in childhood, you were disconnected from self because you were trying to figure out how to make this person happy so that you could avoid the narcissistic rage or emotional manipulation that you endured. So your parent wasn't connected to you, therefore you didn't learn how to connect to yourself. And this process that I'm talking about is a process that helps you to begin connecting to yourself. In my face-to-face coaching, I can often tell when one of my clients, their inner child is actually present in the session. I can tell by their facial expressions what they're saying. And at that moment, sometimes what I'll ask them to help their present self connect to that inner child is I'll ask them what they're feeling, what emotion is coming up in them. They'll name the emotion, and then sometimes I'll say, if that emotion could tell you what it needs right now, what would it say? Or if that emotion could talk, what would it say to you? And I'm always amazed at the answers that I get. Sometimes I'll get an answer like, he just wants to feel safe, or she needs to know that she matters. So something you can ask yourself when that emotion, if you don't know how to connect with yourself, kind of view it objectively and think, well, if my anger could talk and it could tell me what it needs, what would it say? And just be curious. Be curious about what might come up, because you'll get something that comes up. Now here's the hard part. When something does come up, you have to give that to yourself. In other words, if your inner self says, I need to hear this, I need to know that. If you just disconnect and you're like, oh, that's what it is? Oh, whatever. That's stupid. I'm a grown person. I don't need that. That's ridiculous. You've just severed the connection to your inner self. If your inner self says, you know what, I need to take a walk, or I really want to give myself some time tonight to care about what's important to me. It could be anything. The more you show up for your inner self, the more connected to yourself you're going to be, and the emotion will start to resolve because you are actually giving it what it's craving. Trust me, the anger that's coming up, which is usually hiding or being fueled by pain or hurt, it wants something from you. It wants to be healed. And it won't be healed if we just try to stop feeling it. If we figure out what it needs and we start giving that to ourselves, it will slowly, in a period of time, it will be gone. It will really be gone. Okay, so those are the tips. They do work. It's about healing the past wounds, right? Anything that comes up strongly in us is our inner self really just trying to get healed. I would be curious to hear how it goes for you if you apply these tips. So make sure you let me know in the comment section below.